Welkom allemaal, wat leuk dat jullie weer luisteren naar de Alopecia Coach podcast. En ik heb vandaag een primeurtje, because she just told me it's her first podcast interview. En ik ben super blij om tegen jullie te kunnen zeggen dat ik hier nu in gesprek ga met Jen. And you might know her from her Instagram reel. You probably do if you follow women with alopecia or hair loss online. En her reel is Jen, real hair, barely there. En ze heeft ook een YouTube kanaal waar ze super handige, fijne filmpjes filmt van zichzelf. Met tutorials over hoe je haar kan doen. En just real alopecia life. And that's why, ik ga nu naar het Engels over, want obviously she's from Australia. And that's why I'm so happy to be interviewing Jen. So Jen, welcome to this Alopecia Coach podcast. We're so happy to have you. So it's your first podcast interview, and I'm so happy to be here, and I can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. It's actually quite funny. I have a lot of people, particularly Americans, who say that they love the sound of my voice. They say that it's quite soothing, and they said that I should do some ASMR.
Oh, nice. Well, there you go.
My husband certainly does not think that my voice is very soothing.
Maybe depending on the moment and what you're yelling or saying.
Exactly.
So Jen, I'm so happy to be talking to you. First of all, because I think your Instagram is just so refreshing and so amazing to follow. You were, of course, one of the first people that I ran into online when I started to come out of the hair closet, as I always kind of, frame it. And I think it's honest. Well, you say on your Instagram, it's honest and transparent. And that's what I really appreciate, because you see so many different faces online, and I'm not throwing shade to anyone, because I think you should just, come out the way you want to and look the way you want to and talk about whatever you want to. But I can really relate to the content that you're putting out there. So I want to thank you for that.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I don't often get messages, or there will be a lot of people who will just not say anything for a long time, and then finally they do eventually pipe up and say, "Oh, I've been following you for a long time," and they appreciate my honesty. And I don't know how to be anything other than honest. I just tell it how it is. I see it like it is, and I don't need any kind of false advertising or false hope. I just need the facts, and I like to share that with others as well. Because when I was first starting out, well, it was a lot easier than what it is now, but now it's an absolute minefield. Like, you don't know who to trust, who to follow, what's realistic, what's expensive. It's just, there's so much information out there. So I try to help wherever I can.
Well, I think you're doing an amazing job, and thank you for that. And I know a lot of my followers also follow you, so I'm sure I can talk for them as well. Let's get into it, because we are both androgenetic alopecia. So can you tell me a little bit how it started out for you, what age you were? What was that like for you?
Yeah, well, this is a very deep story for me. It's very, very personal. It involves domestic violence. So I was brought up in a household that had very abusive parents, very physically, verbally, emotionally, financially abusive. And that was my childhood. My sister and I, we were not planned. And, my mum, she still had us. My dad didn't love my mother, but they still were married and they stayed together, supposedly for us. But growing up in that abusive household, it would have been better had they have separated. So that was really hard to deal with. So throughout our childhood, my mum had threatened to leave my dad many, many, many times. And of course, it never happened. Fast forward to many years later, I moved interstate. I moved to Melbourne, Victoria in Australia. And it was only then that my mum was serious and she was going to leave my father. And I want to be very clear that it was not just my father that was abusive, it was my mother as well. Many situations, many different circumstances. It was just my sister and I. We felt very alone. So when it came time to her to tell me that she was finally leaving my father, I had to basically go through all of those emotions all over again, and bring up everything that I went through, to try to dig deep to help her to leave my father. So when she decided to leave him, she transferred a whole heap of money from their joint bank account into her own. Like, my dad, he did all of this. He paid all the bills. So she didn't know how to do all of this. So this was the first time that she'd have to learn all of this. She rented an apartment. My dad was getting a procedure done in hospital. And it was while he was under that was the day she took her opportunity to leave him. So she got a whole heap of furniture, took the money, got an apartment, and she also she got out a AVO. Maybe that's not a commonly, basically, I can't remember what it stands for, but basically a violence order against him, a
Oh, yeah,
restraining
yeah.
order.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, So it was really, really hard mentally trying to help her through all of this because, the boy who cried wolf, that's a common thing. And finally, was actually happening. So my sister and I, and also my aunts and uncles, they were helping her. It was a really big deal. It was really happening this time. And it was really, really painful for me to go through all of that again. Um, so then during this time, I actually felt bad for my dad that this was happening. He woke up from the hospital. Of course, his wife had left him. He had no idea. So I felt bad. So on his birthday, I called him to wish him a happy birthday. And the whole time he was trying to get information out of me, where has mum gone to? Um, Basically not even concentrating that I was calling him to, say something nice. Um, Long story short, by the end of that conversation, he was actually blaming me directly for their marriage separation. And that was just unbelievable to hear. Like, something that he could never take responsibility for any of his actions or see where both of them could have come to this point in time. He was not open to any therapy, counseling, any kind of reconciliation whatsoever. But for him to directly blame me for their marriage separation, that blew my mind. I could not believe that. So thankfully, my husband had overheard the conversation and he told me to hang up the phone immediately, which I did. And that was back in 2018, I believe. And so I was early 30s, and that was the last time that I've spoken to my father.
Mhm.
So since then, since my mum had separated from my dad, she had her own place and everything. She constantly kept saying that she was so lonely. And to my disgust, she actually went back to my father, which is a very common thing in domestic violence, which is really sad. But I just couldn't believe that my mum, because she was lonely, she didn't have any friends, she didn't have any support around her, that she just went back to the thing that she had always known, and she went back to my dad. Okay, so this is where the alopecia comes in. So if I wasn't already so stressed enough with having to go through, like, relive the trauma all over again. So then when I found out that mum was going back to dad, I said, basically, you have chosen him over your two daughters, and I cannot support this. Has been traumatic enough for me. So I basically don't want anything to do with you. Then, because of our upbringing being so terrible, my sister, she had a son, and she chose to not allow dad to see him, to have any contact with him, because of the way that we were brought up. So she was protecting him. At the time, she was pregnant with her second son. My So only my mum knew where my sister lived, because they had recently moved, and my sister was keeping that from my dad so that he couldn't come around and
Mm.
find her. Um, So my mum sent my sister's address to lawyers, and both my parents sued my sister to try to get access to her son. So they have
Oh,
absolutely no rights. She's a great parent, like both her and her husband, they're both teachers. They're excellent at being parents. There's absolutely no reason that her son should be taken away from them. Absolutely not. But what parent sues their own child to get access to their grandson? It's absolutely disgusting. And that was just unfathomable to me that somebody could do this to their own flesh and blood, that we supported her leaving him, and then they come together, and that's where they thrive. They always come together when they're arguing, when they're hating on someone else. And in this instance, it was my sister trying to get access to their grandchild. It was absolutely disgusting. And my sister, she has high anxiety from how we've been brought up to begin with. So of
mm,
course she had a lot of she had a lot of health issues because of this anxiety, and would
mm,
often pass out because of the mental illness that this has impacted on her. So then they had numerous meetings of mediation. And again, my sister's pregnant during this time, which my parents weren't aware of. So that's causing extra stress on the unborn baby. And of course, there's the legal costs associated as well. It was a lot. It
yeah.
was so much. So,
I'm
of
already
course,
feeling on the other side of the screen, I'm like filling up with anxiety and
yeah,
no. Yeah.
it was so hard, and the worst part was I was interstate. So I'm hearing all of this from my sister, and I couldn't physically be there to support her, but of course, we were fully prepared to go full guns blazing, take my parents to court. I would be a witness for her, support her no matter what. So that mentally was the biggest toll that I've ever had. It really was hard. It wasn't easy at all. I remember when I was at work, I was receiving those phone calls from my sister to find out what's been happening, and I had a mental breakdown. I couldn't go back into the office.
Mm,
And that that trauma, having to relive what I had already gone through being brought up, and then finally escaping that, and then having to relive it all over again, that
yeah.
was what had caused my hair loss. Um, and I remember looking in the mirror as I'm doing my hair each day for work, and I would move some hair over to hide one bald patch to only create another. No matter how much teasing that I would do, it would just it so October 2018, that's when I noticed the hair loss, and it was on top of my crown, and it was only because I was using a mirror at the back of my head could I actually see the hair loss. When I look at myself straight in the mirror, I didn't notice anything. And when I see that bird's eye view, that's when you can't hide it. You really do see everything.
Mm,
Um, I the next stressful part, I found out that they hired a private investigator to try and track down my location. I don't know what they were trying to do or how they were trying to find me, or if perhaps I was next and they were going to try to sue me next. Um, so that was incredibly stressful, and thankfully, as far as I'm aware, they haven't been able to find me since then. I have had no contact with them. I have had to shut them out of my life. And unfortunately, as hard as it is, even though they're my family, I have had to choose for them to not be part of my life.
mhm,
And, I have a lot of people say, oh, but that's your mum, that's your parents. But I have been through that much trauma that I'm better off without them in my life, and that has been one of the hardest decisions to make. There are weak moments, absolutely, where, I wish I had my mum. I wish I had someone to hug and to share different events and news with, and to show them how well I'm doing in Melbourne. But unfortunately, they are toxic people, and they have never changed in all of my life. So I had to make that decision for me.
Mm.
Um, so that is how I got my alopecia, and it has not changed since 2018. It hasn't gotten worse, but it also hasn't gotten better.
Yeah. Thank you for telling this story and for
Thank you
being
for letting me
so,
share it.
yeah, it sounds like a lot. And that is an absolute understatement. Like I said, I have goosebumps and I can feel the anxiety from the other side, you know? I can only imagine what it must have been for you girls and still
It was
is till,
it
yeah,
is hard.
yeah.
My mum actually, even though I've blocked her number, she left me a voice message a month or two ago, which was frustrating. I didn't think that that could get through, but she left me a voice message to say that she's now leaving my dad yet again for real.
Mm,
And
wow.
that was a very triggering thing to hear, because here we go again. And what's the frustrating part is that I believe that she thinks that it's only dad that was the issue, that once he was out of the picture, it's all fine. I think that she doesn't take accountability, that she abused us too, but
Mm,
also she let our dad abuse us. There was
mm,
no protection. We were cornered into our rooms, and we were hit. We were made to bleed. Uh, we were criticized all of the time. My dad, he would always say that if you don't have nice skin, nice teeth, and nice hair, you're ugly. So now that I have androgenic alopecia, that's brought up a whole other lot of
inner dialogue.
triggering. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's been really difficult.
yeah. I can imagine. Yeah. Thank you again for being so open about this. And, it sounds from your story that your alopecia actually is really linked, of course, to, what you've been going through. So it's stress
Yeah,
induced and trauma induced. Yeah.
absolutely. And it's my mum, her I have my thinness of my hair, my fine hair from her. Hers is very thin as well, but never as bad as showing your scalp. Yeah, to a point where it just cannot be hidden and it cannot be covered up. But I have always had very fine and very thin hair. Um,
Yeah.
so hearing other people in the community that they have all different types of alopecia, there's not too many that have it from trauma. So when I do find those people, I can very much relate to them, and they can relate to me as well.
Yeah.
Um, there is some kinds of alopecia where the hair grows back,
Mm.
and it it is difficult to follow those people, because they're celebrating. They're like, oh, you need to wash your hair more, or you need to use a scalp massager, and they try to give you all these tips, and then their hair grows back, but then it falls out again. So it's just like, you know, it may not have worked for you. You don't actually know if that's the cause or the solution. It's very different. It's very unpredictable.
Yeah. You don't get any answers, right? Or any guarantees or any, yeah, straightforward
Exactly.
information. Yeah, and even if you
Yeah.
go to the doctors, that's one of the reasons why I started this business or like being the alopecia coach, is because when I was 18, I was diagnosed with it. And my dad is really bald and he started balding at a very young age. So for me, I think it's just the genetic lottery that I didn't win. I didn't win that ticket. But I got sent home with the diagnosis and like a shoulder tab, like, oh, I'm sorry, good luck.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Like, where do I go? And it's still like that, right? Like you said,
It's
there's
exactly
nothing. very many answers. There isn't that much research being done either, because obviously it's not life threatening, and we're women. So that's not
Yep.
where the funds go.
Yep.
Uh,
Absolutely right. A lot
Yeah.
of people actually say that androgenic alopecia stems from your mum's father's side. So I found that
Really?
quite interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
it's news to me.
because that was what I first heard. And yes, my mum's father is bald. But again, I know that I didn't have this hair loss before the trauma.
Yeah. Yeah.
And who's to say I could have had hair loss over the years eventually, because of genetics and things like that. But there's no guarantees. There's no set answers,
And
and
it's
that
usually a
was
combination, I think. I know with
100%.
Alopecia, there's a lot of people that get frustrated when they say, oh, it's stress, or people ask them, why are you so stressed? But it's an
Yep.
autoimmune thing that gets triggered by stress or can be triggered by stress. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
and I have been racking my brain how it happened to me, but it doesn't help you either, because
No.
fact is, this is your reality, this is what it is, and you're gonna
Yep.
have to move forward with it.
Oh, there are
So,
so many people that just absolutely torture themselves trying to
mm,
figure out what they have, when they got it, what did they do wrong, what can they do to try to fix it.
absolutely.
And that it pains me to hear other people constantly just stewing over something that they can't control. They absolutely cannot control. So I have always said, focus on what you can control. That is so important. You can control, you know, how you go about this, how you move on. If you decide to wear the hair, or if you decide for it to not bother you, if you decide to shave your head, there are so many things that you can do. But in terms of hair growth and making it stay long term, that's out of everybody's control. There is no solution, there is no cure for androgenic alopecia.
Mhm. Yeah, I completely agree. I see a lot of women in my coaching sessions that think they should think like that, but they can't because they're not allowing themselves to actually first grieve, and go into the
Mm.
bad, scary, dark place.
Yeah.
And because they don't either, they've a lot of women have been taught to be strong, not cry, suck it up. We Dutchies are pretty, raised pretty in a tough way. Like, big girls are we you shouldn't be vain, you shouldn't care about the way you look, all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
I find that, yes, it is your reality, and yes, you should completely, absolutely agree with what you're saying. Move forward. You should also really let yourself feel all the feels, and
Yeah.
that, I think, is acceptance, and be semi okay with the good feelings, but also all the ugly feelings that come with this, in order to be able to
Absolutely.
move forward.
And I think that over time, the ugly feelings do become less and less, but you have to acknowledge them no matter how big or small they are. But I think it's important, if you make the decision to wear hair, you can't dwell on the sadness and the bad feelings all the time. It's not healthy. It's not going to help anybody. It's really not.
Yeah. What was it like for you? So you found the bald patches, you couldn't hide them anymore, I think, right?
Yeah. So
What was your next?
I I think I took a picture of myself, and when I saw the sparseness, I was actually mortified because I had my hair up in a ponytail that day. And I thought, I've just gone to work like this. And I'm a short person, but even sitting down on a chair, people can walk past you and they can see the bird's eye view of what's going on up there. So I was quite mortified. And I remember the first time that I had discovered the world of alternative hair is I searched the hashtag thin hairstyles in Instagram.
Mm,
And that's when I first came across somebody that was putting on a topper. And I was amazed because I was originally going to look into hair extensions, but having the thinning on the crown of my head, that would not work for me. So that was never going to be an option. So when I discovered what a topper was, then I started to look into it. I thought, wow, this looks so easy and it's so seamless. Um, and so I went to my husband and I said, he was sitting at his chair and he was working, he was finishing up for the day. And I got up the courage to say to him, my hair's thinning and it's falling out. And I think I want to look into this. And I showed him the video of the hair topper. And he said, whatever you need, whatever you want to do, like I'll support you no matter what. And he said, we can go and get medication if that's what you want to do. And at the time, I did want to do that because it was the very first time I wanted to try to fix it, and at that time, I didn't know that there wasn't a cure. And so
Yes.
thankfully, I found more and more people in this hair loss community that had been the guinea pigs, had been the rabbits, that have taken all of the medications and the lotions and the potions and all of the needling and the torture, yeah, and went through all of that.
Magical cures.
Yeah, exactly. There's all kinds of people promising the world, and of course, they're going to take your money in an instant. And the biggest aha moment for me was someone said to me, for them, if even if their bio hair could grow back 100%, it still wouldn't compare to alternative hair. And that was the same for me. Like, I've never had anything substantial. It's always been thin and I can't hold a curl. It's been very, very fine. And so, thankfully for me, that stage of grief was easier for me because I didn't have much to lose to grieve in the first place, unlike some other women, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can completely relate. People don't see this, but I'm like nodding my head very much. Oh, me too. I had like 5 strands and then I had 4 and 3, but it's never been good hair, you know?
You
Same for
get
me.
it?
That's what I tell people too. It's so easy to put this on. And I've never
Yeah.
in my wildest dreams had hair like this. So,
No,
yeah. But you
not
said
ever.
you had to collect a little bit of courage to tell your husband. Were you afraid
Yeah.
to talk to him
So,
about it?
I think it wasn't talking to him about it because he's always been so supportive and wonderful, but it was just the admittance of it, that
Mm,
actually saying it out loud and, uh, saying that there's a problem. I think that was the hardest thing to come to deal with, and also with him having his love heart glasses on, like, I don't want him to see me in anything that what he already does. Like, I don't want him to see that I'm damaged or that I wasn't good enough or that I had something wrong with me, essentially.
yeah, absolutely.
So after that, then I booked an appointment to go to the dermatologist. Again, this is something that I learned within this community, that only a dermatologist can diagnose you. No other doctor can do that. So I walked in, and at that time, I was wearing a topper, and I built up the courage to say, actually, I went there for an anti-aging routine, but
Ah.
knowing in the back of my mind I needed to address the alopecia as well. So as the appointment was wrapping up, I said to her, I said, "Oh, and also I've got alopecia, I've got some hair loss. Is there anything that you can help me with that?" And she looked at me so puzzled because I was wearing a topper. So she didn't see any hair loss. And then I took it off and she was like, wow, that I never would have known that was so realistic looking. That is really surprising to me. So then she assessed my scalp and she said, yep, I can definitely see some androgenic alopecia there.
Mm,
And from that moment, that was the like
mm,
I just needed, because I felt crazy. I felt like did I have hair loss? Was I imagining this? Was it really as bad as what I had thought it was? Because my husband kept saying to me that it's just my parts. He didn't think I had any hair loss. And
Mm,
so it was, in a way, gaslighting me, but I know that he was doing it out of love, and perhaps he still doesn't see that I have hair loss, but it just made me question everything that I was thinking and feeling. So
mm.
having that confirmation from that dermatologist, it was such a relief as well as being shattering at the exact same time.
Yes, yeah, I get that. Yeah.
And then from there, I once I had that diagnosis, I was not going to, and this is what I tell so many people, do not waste your energy, your time, your money, or emotions on things that are not going to work long term. Like there are so many different medications and things that you have to take for life, and there
Mm,
are so many really harsh side effects, and
mm,
it's just not worth it. And the moment you stop taking some of them, your hair falls out all over again. And so again, for me, alternative hair, it just does not compare to if I was to grow my bio hair 100% back again. This
yeah.
has given me the most confidence I've ever had in my life. Like you said, I've never been able to have beautiful hair like this. And I can go from short to long to blonde to brown to red, like do whatever I want in a minute and change it up. Like those people that spend what, 6 hours at a hairdresser? Oh my gosh. No thanks.
People can't see this, but you're lighting up as you're talking about this. You really are. You're like radiating and you're, yes. And you're preaching to the choir because I'm completely on this side with you. But a lot of people I know that are, just started dabbling into this alopecia
Mm,
world, hairless community. Like you
yeah,
said, there's so much to find and so much is being told. Like it's really hard to know, what to believe and also what the best first step would be for you. So you said you
yeah.
started with the topper and
Yes, and it was a terrible topper, my very, very first one. It's like my topper needed a topper. It was so thin and fine, and I think it was $800, and I could not believe at how expensive that
yeah,
was for a topper. And I think it was, like, it's one of those mini ones. It wasn't even like a proper, 8 by 8. I think it was like I don't know, 6 by 5, or I don't know, it was very small.
yeah,
And it was hard to accept that that's the cost, and
yeah.
I and that was me, spending a lot of money, but also not spending as much as I could have spent because I was testing the waters and dipping my feet in. I didn't want to spend a lot of money. And I felt bad because it's half my husband's money as well that
Mhm.
I'm spending. Um, so I felt very guilty about that. But of course, he's never stopped me from spending money. He's always been very supportive, says whatever I need, which makes me feel even guiltier because he never spends any money on himself. But yeah, so I reached out to the community. I showed videos and photos of what I had received. It was the wrong color. I didn't actually put it on once I had received it, and I said to this community, "Is this right? Like, is this what they should look like?" And everyone's like, "No, no, 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 no! Like that is really terrible quality."
Mm.
And so I
And if you
contacted.
say, sorry to interrupt you, but for other people listening and thinking, oh, I want to do that too. What do you mean exactly by reaching out to the community? Do you mean Instagram?
Yeah, so
Mhm.
I created a hair page, my real hair barely there. And when I first started, I was very private. I didn't show my face. I would only show like my alopecia. I was very, very hidden. It took me a
Yeah.
long time to branch out publicly. Yeah, it was a long time, and thankfully I found some supporters and people would message me, yep, through DMs. But Instagram, it's been the biggest alopecia community. I was so surprised when I first thought about the word alopecia or hair loss. I always thought that the sick or the elderly had hair loss. It blew my mind the amount of young women that have this. That was the biggest surprise for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thankfully, I had everybody's support, and they were telling me because, I don't know, and a lot of women, they don't know either, and they just accept such shit quality,
Mm.
and it's not right. And these companies, they charge so much, and then they blame the customer. That's what drives me the craziest. Like, we are vulnerable, we don't know any better, and then we get blamed for something that isn't right rather than questioning it. And everybody should always question it. Or if you're not sure, reach out to this community and we will
Yeah.
guide you. We will 100% help you.
Yeah.
Um, so when I went back to this company, thankfully, I was able to send it back to them. But the mistake that I made is I didn't select for them to sign upon receiving the product. I sent it via express and it was
Okay.
tracked, but they didn't sign for it. So they like apparently was received, but then they said that they never received it.
Yeah.
So I yeah, it was very stressful. So I tracked it and went through our postal system. They told me, well, they sent me the picture of apparently where it was sent to and the address and everything. And then I went back to the company. They were like, no, we never got it. So it was really stressful. So then I decided to go through my bank and I disputed the transaction, saying that it wasn't what I had paid for. The photos, what was being advertised was completely different to what I actually received.
Yeah.
So thankfully, they were able to give me the money back. And I'm one of the lucky ones. There are so many people that have wasted
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of dollars and they just wear that. They think
Yeah.
like that's just, you
Yeah.
know,
So you
how it
also,
is.
yeah. So one very concrete piece of advice is if you're sending something back, do it met getekend ontvangen, is it in Dutch? So make sure if they receive it, they have to sign it. But that's good advice
Absolutely.
because you probably don't think about that in the moment because you're just like, oh,
Absolutely not.
nah.
Yeah, I just wanted to send it back to them as soon as possible. So express shipping, but that
Yeah.
signature was key. So that was really
Yeah.
important.
So
And
this
get
is maybe,
everything in writing. Oh,
I'm sorry?
get everything in writing. It
Oh,
is
right.
so, so vital. Don't don't take phone calls, don't get voice messages, screenshot everything. And I mean the messages between you and the vendor, but also of the listing itself, so that when your item actually does arrive, you can compare it. And if there is a problem, you have that listing. Because most
Yeah.
companies, after the item's sold, they take down the listing. So that's really important.
Yeah. Also very good. Yeah. So you're wearing gorgeous hair now. I've been looking at it for about half an hour now. What is it that you're wearing now? This is a whole wig, right? I think.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
because your own hair is longer. I mean, is it?
It's a bit
Because that's what I
straggly.
saw on YouTube and Instagram. Yeah. Yeah. So it's beautiful. And is it
Thank
true that
you.
you wear, like you said, brown hair, ginger colored, blonde, like the whole rainbow?
Yeah, well, except for black and platinum blonde, I look so bad in those colors. But yes, I have all different colors and lengths, although my husband thinks they all look the same.
Ah, really?
Such a
How
male
about
thing to say.
how about your friends? Because I know there's many people that want to try hair and, wigs or toppers or something like that, but they're afraid of gossiping and people finding them different and weird or vain, like I said earlier, or sick, and that they have to be pitied. That's like a fear that many of my clients have when they embark on this whole hair wearing journey. What was that like
Yeah.
for you? Were you transparent
Well,
about it or did you keep it private?
I I kind of got caught out by my niece. So I had everything separate. I have my personal Instagram account and my hair accounts.
Mm.
And she was studying hairdressing at the time. And she came across some of my hair content. And I can't even remember how how I found out that she found me. I think she tried to add
Ah,
me. Um, Yeah, or she liked a post and straight away I'm like, "Oh my god." And I was sitting in bed and I'm just like panicking internally, like, "What do I do? How do I handle this?" Because at that moment, I hadn't come out to everybody. I
Mhm.
think my sister knew, so not my in-laws or anything like that. So I just thought, okay, I have to handle this straight on. And I'm a big believer in the way you tell it is the way people receive it. So if
Mhm.
you are, if you feel sad and, then people are going to pity you. But if you embrace it and you say how amazing it is, they're going to think you're amazing as well. So that is you you control the narrative. That is a big lesson that I've tried to teach people and that I've learned. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately for me, the story was a lot harder to tell having my backgrounds and
Mm.
the abuse and everything. And of course, everybody didn't necessarily know what I had been through. So, I laid it all out in a very daunting Instagram and Facebook post where I had two pictures of myself, and at that time I shouldn't say only, I had two wigs, one brunette and one blonde, and I was wearing the same shirt. So I posted two pictures and laid out the whole story of why if people see me wearing different colored hair, that this is why. And I got an overwhelming amount of support. But then my husband also said, he was proud of me, but he was like, I wear braces, but I don't necessarily have to tell people that I wear braces. And it made me feel a bit stupid. Like, why did I tell people? Like, they don't need to know. Um, the reason why I did it is so I could be free to wear whatever I wanted to whenever I wanted to. But
Yeah.
also in the slight chance that someone could be suffering from alopecia or know someone who's suffering as well and that I could potentially help them as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. And what was it like for you to post that? To come
I've never
out
felt more sick in my life.
more liberated or more scared or both?
Sick. I felt so sick. It was just I felt sick to the
Yeah.
stomach posting that. And I honestly felt a bit silly afterwards. Like I shouldn't have said that. But at least it was out in the world.
Mm.
And it was done. Um, so I honestly I didn't feel any better or any worse, I guess, for doing it. I'm not sure if I would do it again. Again, this is only for my own reasons, for my own freedom, that
Yeah.
if I were to go back, it's good that it's out there, basically.
Right. Yeah, like you said, I think many other people will feel very seen and heard and inspired by being that open and transparent about it.
Exactly. And it's crazy the amount of women that suffer hair loss. I think it's 50% of all women throughout their lifetime will suffer some kind of hair loss. And that stat is way too high. But also
Yeah.
the expectation that us as women, we're expected to be perfect, and all of the people in the media and in the news, they're all wearing some kind of alternative hair. Extensions
Absolutely.
and halo pieces seem to be accepted, but wigs aren't as much. And I am now full-time wig wearer. I wore toppers for over 2 years and now wigs for over 3 years. And if someone had told me that wigs are so much easier when I was wearing toppers, there's no
Mhm.
way I would have believed them. Like, wigs was a very dirty word to me. I
Same.
didn't want to be associated with wigs because of a lot of the terrible costume kinds of ones, the dress up kinds. There
Yeah.
are a lot of bad wigs out there.
Yeah. Definitely. I remember that part. I started with toppers as well because I had the same, on top of my crown, like hair loss.
Yeah.
I now have a patchy, I don't know what the hell's going on in my head right now, but I have a bald patch at front and the sides here, and then very thin hair. But in my neck, in my nape, it's really, well, no, it's not thick. It's
Yeah.
never been thick, but there's still a lot of hair there. But for me
Yeah.
as well, making the transition from a small topper to a little larger, a little larger, a little larger, then still making that transition from going full wig, because I've been wearing wigs for 4 years, five maybe now, I think, like full wigs. And
Yeah.
it's like you said, it's so much easier. But
Isn't it?
I had the same apprehension about it. It was still quite a step, and yeah, to make that transition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
And I haven't looked back. I have not gone back to toppers
Me
since
neither.
going to wigs.
I wouldn't want to
Although
either.
oh, absolutely not. I find that wigs are just so much more natural looking, and but I think another really big lesson that I try to teach this community and that I had to learn myself is all wigs and all toppers are not made the same. My very first wig was horrendous. It
Mm.
was it was from Uni Wigs. I was wearing it for 30 minutes in my bedroom on a winter's day. So it was cold in Melbourne and I
Mhm.
was sweating profusely just
Oh.
wearing it. The lace was thick. There was too much hair. It was poor quality. It was
Mm.
just terrible. So when I I was actually recommended that I try a wig by Sharon from Highline. And I was very skeptical. I thought, oh, I don't know, based off my knowledge of this one other wig that I'd tried.
Yeah.
And then the moment I put it on, I just was like, this is amazing. It's so incredible. I could not believe it. So I think that that's so important. Just because you might get one bad wig doesn't mean you're going to get another or topper for that matter.
Yeah. Don't give up, right? Keep looking because the good stuff is out
Absolutely.
there. And yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that was the other thing. Everyone that I saw that was wearing wigs wouldn't put their hair up in different styles. They would just wear them down, and I didn't understand why. And then when I got a wig myself, I'm like, I can do everything in this. Why isn't everybody else doing that?
Yeah.
And I, I learned that, yeah, again, it's the different make and the different styles. They're not all the same, and some wigs are quite restrictive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you say that. This morning, I was up at 6 in the morning because I have a kid that's up really early all the time. And I use the time for some quiet working. And I looked at some of your YouTube videos, like the tutorial with the two pigtails and the braids, and you flip it in the back. I wanted to look pretty for you this morning, but then, of course, things went differently and I didn't do it. But I'll be trying to do that this afternoon because I think it is so easy. And I have never been good at makeup and hairstyles and styling. I'm just not into it. Like I love it when someone does it to me and I can see that it looks nice, but I don't want to take all that time and effort to do that. But that's what I like about your account as well. So people also look her up on Instagram, but also on YouTube because you make it's so easy. Like
And
really,
I
my
promise
5-year-old
you,
can do this.
yeah, I promise you, I have never been good at hair myself. Like I said, I had a few strands to work with, and I've never
Yeah,
been able to curl or to style. So I've had to learn all of this as an adult. And
yeah,
I like to show it exactly how I do it. And maybe it might be fast forwarded, but I show all the steps so that the everyday person who doesn't know how to do hair and that we're all learning can do this as well. But we are so lucky because we can style off our heads. We
mhm.
can do it the day before.
Yeah, or
Like,
you said
how good
in
is
one of
that?
your videos, you said, "I curled this 3 months ago and it's still in there." Like, what the hell?
It's so good.
So
Like, there are
good.
so many benefits that I think that people who are new to hair, they haven't got there yet. They don't know it yet. But to me,
Yeah,
there are more pros than there are cons to
yeah,
wearing alternative hair.
yeah, yeah, same. But I also see that I know that for myself, it can be such a long, dragged out process to be able to allow yourself to even see, like, the good stuff in it, right?
Yeah, so true. And I think that's another hard thing. Most people, I would say, are not close to a store of decent quality. So
Right.
having to shop online by just going by some little pictures or some Instagram stories, like, it's so hard, and you can't feel it, you can't try it on, you don't know if it's the right fit or right
It's a
size or
commitment.
just
Yeah.
yeah, it just feels like you. So when you are first starting out, it's near impossible.
Right.
I tried to find vendors local to me, and that bad topper was a local vendor. And
Mm.
when I was trying to find someone that isn't a rip-off and that's good quality, it was this community that helped me. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to help them as well. But oh my goodness, the market is so saturated right now. It's so much more than when I started 5, 6 years ago, whenever I started. Oh, I do
Yeah.
not envy anybody starting out right now, but you can only hope that they find the right people
Right.
rather than the wrong people who will try to sell you all kinds of crap.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have two more questions, if that's okay.
of course.
Um, is there any advice you would give your, how old were you? End of 30, starting out on 30, right? When it started with you.
I think I was early 30s and now I'm late 30s.
Exactly. Yeah. I just turned 40, so I can relate. Is there any advice you would give yourself starting out in your 30s, discovering your bald patches with the wisdom that you have now and the knowledge you have now? What would you tell your 30-something-year-old?
Focus on the things that you can control.
Mm,
Don't cheap it. And don't waste your energy, time, money, and emotions on treatments that will not work long term.
yeah. Preach. I think that's really, really valuable. Yeah, definitely. And then I have another fun question in the end.
Mhm.
Um, How many wigs do you own at the moment? And are there wigs that you wear the most, or do you don't play favorites? You try to switch them up.
All right. In all honesty, I own 7 human hair wigs and
Mm.
no, 8 human hair wigs and 1 synthetic
Okay,
active wig.
right. Oh, so you use that when you go work out or run, kind of.
I used to wear it at the beach, when I
Yeah,
first got it, but
yeah.
I really love the feeling of the water through my bio hair, so I tend to not wear it at all anymore. Um, that's probably my next step, finding the courage to wear one of my expensive wigs swimming. Because
Okay.
when I went to Thailand recently and I went swimming with just my bio hair, I'm getting a burnt scalp now. So
Hmm.
that's what I feel like this community is missing, something to swim in that looks uh, like as good as a real wig rather
Yeah.
than just a synthetic or one with the headband. Like I'm scared about the lace, ruining the lace. I'm not scared about ruining the quality of the hair because you can wash it and condition it after, but it's just that lace. And they're not cheap to potentially ruin, but I haven't had the courage to do that yet.
And you think the race it will discolor or it will rip, or what are you worried
Yeah,
about?
perhaps rip or tear or maybe lift. That's the thing that I'm
Yeah,
concerned about.
yeah, yeah, I get it. And is there one
So
week that's your absolute favorite, or do you have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
it is tricky because each time I put each of them on, I fall in love with them all over again.
Good.
If I was if the house was burning and I have to only pick one,
That's good.
ah, it probably the very first human hair wig that I have. She's over 3 years old and she's still in excellent condition. The one that the curls have lasted since,
Oh,
last
yeah,
August. So
yeah,
I just love her a lot, and it was the first time going blonde, so definitely holds a special place in my heart.
great. Yeah. So Jen, you also said you had a lot of support from this community. Is there anything else that it has brought you and that you would recommend people listening to this podcast?
I think supporting those who are supporting you, I think that's really important. And to not be afraid to speak up. And because you are just sharing your experiences, you're sharing facts, doesn't necessarily mean that you are brand bashing anybody. You are just sharing what you see, and you are therefore helping not only the company to improve, but also providing all of the information for other members of this community to be completely informed for when they make their own decision when purchasing. Like, I think it's
Right?
important to share not only the good, but share the not so great as well, where improvements can be made. Because
Yeah.
someone might love frizzy hair, but to someone else that might be a deal breaker. So sharing every element that somebody sees will help
Yeah.
somebody else make a decision.
So Jen, thank you so much for being on this podcast. I think it was amazing to talk to you. And like I said, I really appreciate your candidness. I'm not sure what the English word is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your honesty, your transparency. I think that's so refreshing. So for everyone listening, please, 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 if you don't already, follow Jen on Instagram, on her Instagram account, Real Hair Barely There.
I'm so grateful for you to ask me to share with you. So thank you for being an amazing host. And I'm so glad that you found me and now I found you.
Bedankt voor het luisteren naar de Alopecia Coach podcast. Ik hoop dat je het leuk en waardevol hebt gevonden. Als dat zo is, zou je dan deze podcast willen volgen en willen raten met 5 sterren? Daar zou je me enorm mee helpen. Wil je een keer een afspraak maken om te kijken hoe ik jou kan helpen? Boek dan een gratis sessie op mijn website www.alopeciacoach.com. Ik denk graag met je mee. Tot de volgende keer!